Wait, is this satire? Y'all defending Osama Bin Laden now? It's not that I'm defending him. I'm not defending him because, like, everything is fucked up. Like, all of this shit is fucked up. But I'm not about to sit here and act like he's just the worst person in the world when America has literally been terrorizing people
since the beginning of history.
Because traditional media will seize on literally any opportunity to try and prove that TikTok is dangerous, radicalizing young people, and needs to be shut down. No one cared about TikTok until Pew Research started studying how many Americans get their news from TikTok. And earlier this week, they showed that at least 50% of Americans get some of their news on TikTok.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Let 'em Bacon Podcast. So let's talk about this new TikTok problem. This new problem that we have with this new TikTok generation and sympathizing with Osama Bin Laden's letter to America. We definitely have a problem these days. Gen Z, who is the biggest user of TikTok, are now promoting that this letter is an example of our current position when it comes to supporting Israel and the conflict with Gaza. This position comes from our broken educational institutions. It comes from our corrupt media and the algorithm-driven social media platforms that brainwash our kids every single day. Not only that, not just brainwashes, but completely radicalizes them. Constantly, our kids, Gen Z, are being told that white people are evil, that white people are oppressive, that white people are in a constant path to try to remove indigenous people from their lands, that white people are always trying to keep us oppressed. This is what they learn every single day. And when they read a letter such as the letter to America, they immediately default to, oh my God, he is right. And that is sickening. It is sickening to hear our Gen Z, our young men and women in this country sympathizing with the terrorists. See, the problem with Gen Z is that it receives its information from these small sources of unregulated, and I'm not even going to say regulation because I don't believe in regulation when it comes to media, but from these biased sources that are constantly being manipulated. These 50-second algorithm-driven content that continues to keep our kids in this loop of fake information and propaganda and just completely radicalizing the way they think. See, what the problem is that these kids don't understand, and they don't know that Osama Bin Laden was not oppressed. Osama Bin Laden's dad was rich as hell. He was a billionaire in Saudi Arabia who owned a giant company. Osama Bin Laden, by all counts, was a rich, privileged person. He didn't need anything in his life. He had a bunch of money. He could go all over the Middle East, buy anything he wanted. But no, he instead decided to take $250 million from his dad's company and use it to fight in Afghanistan and fight against the Soviets. Not only that, but he used his dad's equipment to ensure that those assets were used to fight the Soviets. And somewhere along the line of him fighting the Soviets and doing all these other different things, he got radicalized and decided, you know what? I don't like America. I don't like the West. And so he started targeting the West, killing Americans in different parts of the world. This is the problem with these TikTokers. They don't understand the full story. They only read a small letter, and because their minds are so radicalized and there's trigger manipulation where they get triggered by different words, it's almost like programming. They read this letter and they're like, oh my God, this is true. And that is super, super scary. See, these kids or Gen Z don't understand that Bin Laden facilitated and financed many terrorist attacks. It wasn't just 9/11, even though 9/11 was one of the most, if not the most horrible attack on the United States since Pearl Harbor. These kids don't know that Bin Laden in 1998 attacked our U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania, killing over 220 people, to include Muslims.
Car bombs exploded outside the U.S. embassies in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam on the morning of August 7, 1998. The attacks killed more than 200 people and injured around 5,000, mostly African civilians. What had happened was the first major attack by al-Qaeda on American targets and the worst international terrorist incident on African soil. Afterwards, the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation placed al-Qaeda leader Osama Bin Laden on its list of most wanted fugitives. William Rosenau is with the RAND Corporation Research Group in Washington.
It was, in a lot of ways, al-Qaeda's coming out party. I mean, here they are able to carry out devastating near simultaneous attacks on 2 U.S. embassies in Africa. And that represented just a huge improvement in their capability.
These kids don't understand that Bin Laden also attacked our U.S. sailors in the USS Cole by blowing up a small suicide boat and killing, like I said, 17 of our sailors when they attacked the USS Cole.
We were not being vigilant. We let our guard down.
In short, we didn't know what we didn't know. On October 12, 2000, 11 months before 9/11, most Americans had never heard of al-Qaeda or Osama bin Laden. In the port of Aden, Yemen, suicide bombers pulled up alongside the destroyer as it refueled and blew a 40 by 40 foot hole in the side of the ship. 17 sailors died, 39 more were hurt.
You see, again, TikTokers do not understand that Bin Laden has targeted our own allies in Afghanistan. We're talking about the Northern Alliance. They probably don't even know who the Northern Alliance is, who fought radical Islamic groups trying to get rights for their Afghan people. Just 2 days prior to the September 11 attacks, on September 9th, Bin Laden's own suicide fighter, with a bomb hidden inside of a camera, killed Ahmed Massoud, who was the leader of the Northern Alliance. Why? Because Massoud was trying to warn America about potential attacks that were coming. Massoud was our ally in Afghanistan, and he killed him. And in turn, this led to the September 11 attacks.
When the Taliban first came to power in the 1990s, only one Afghan leader managed to defend his province against the terror group's onslaught. His name was Ahmad Shah Massoud. Afghans called him the Lion of Panjshir. He was a national hero. The al-Qaeda assassinated Massoud on the 9th of September 2001, 2 days before 9/11. Our next report tells you why the al-Qaeda felt threatened by Massoud.
Your leader is dead. This is how the Taliban announced the assassination of Ahmad Shah Massoud, the Lion of Panjshir, in September 2001. For the Taliban and the al-Qaeda, their biggest challenger was gone. But Massoud's legacy continues in Afghanistan. He is the country's national hero. Born in the scenic Panjshir Valley in Afghanistan, Massoud fought for his country throughout his life. Massoud's first brush with revolutionary activities was during his student days when he joined a movement to oppose the Soviet-backed communist government in Afghanistan. He was only 20 years old. Massoud emerged as the leading anti-Soviet guerrilla leader in the 1980s. The war against the Soviets was over in 1989. But Massoud had a new challenge, and he was not the one to back down. In the 1990s, the Lion of Panjshir waged war against the Taliban, who had by then seized power in Afghanistan. The odds were against Massoud. His Northern Alliance controlled less than 5% of the Afghan territory. In spite of this, Massoud prevented Panjshir from falling into the hands of the Taliban. He toured the world from Europe to the United States to mobilize support for the resistance and humanitarian aid for Afghans. He also had a warning for the West. In his speech to the European Parliament, Massoud mentioned an impending attack. The world did not heed him, but his enemies did. Massoud was assassinated by the al-Qaeda just 2 days before 9/11. It was a suicide blast by 2 terrorists posing as journalists in Afghanistan's Takhar province. The hit was ordered by 9/11 mastermind Osama Bin Laden himself.
And the problem is that these kids are so indoctrinated now that they even think that September 11 was an inside job. They think that it's all, everything, they're just so confused because of all the crap that they see on social media, all the crap that's getting fed to them daily. We have flat earthers, we have conspiracy theories when it comes to September 11th. And it's just crazy and dangerous that we don't put the stop to our own institutional governing bodies that promote all these things. Where we're seeing pro-Hamas marches and protests all over our universities. You see, the irony and the sad thing about this is that Gen Z, who is the most vocal when it comes to social issue and social justices, right? When we talk about LGBTQ rights, when we talk about women's rights and sexual freedom and sexual expression, these are the same people that are now advocating for a terrorist who believes in Sharia law. They probably don't even know what Sharia law. Sharia law is not a thing of myth. It's not fake news. This is something that people in the Middle East and many countries such as Iran and Afghanistan live every single day. Women over there, they have to wear a burqa. They can't go in the streets uncovered. If you're gay, you're going to get thrown off a roof or burned in public. If you do any kind of cheating or promiscuous activity, you're going to be buried in the ground and stoned to death. When I mean buried, you're going to be buried to the head, and rocks are going to be chucked at your head. I don't know if these people even remember when ISIS was putting people inside of cages and lighting them on fire. They don't. One, maybe because they just don't care. We've created this generation of people that are so close-minded that they just stay in their bubble, in their echo chamber, whether it's fake, misled, radicalized misinformation, and they just stay there. It is an issue that has become a virtual cancer because we cannot speak logic into our Gen Zers or other people like our Gen Zers. They can see evil for what it is live. They will call media that's reported by the IDF fake, but still promote the media propagated by Hamas with inflated numbers and call it reality. They could see the acts of October 7th where Hamas goes and kills 1,200, 300 people and record it all for the world to see and justify that. These are dangerous times that we're living in. These TikTokers fail to realize that you cannot have a car if you're a woman, that you can't be doing things such as OnlyFans, or even have a job for that matter. Looking pretty, wearing your makeup. I'll even go as far as saying that pink hair that you have. No, it's not happening, bud. It's not happening, they, them. See, the freedoms that we have in this country are things that you guys are not appreciating. The things that we have in this country are things that Osama does not want. Osama hates the West. He hated our freedom. He hated everything that America stood for. It's not about being oppressed. Bin Laden was not oppressed. Why did Bin Laden use all of his company's resources, his dad's resources, and try to help Afghanistan by building it up? Instead, he chose to control women and oppress and push Sharia law. That's what he did. He wanted to make sure that every Jew in the world was dead. It wasn't about Israel occupying the land. He just hated Jews. Just like he hates America, or hated America, I should say. And again, the fact that we have TikTokers out there promoting this and saying, oh my God, he was right, is sickening. Utterly disgusting. Here lies a problem too. When we have a biased media, that is constantly catering to these liberal agendas and trying to spread misinformation and trying to keep the public just against conservatives or against American ideals, we have a problem. When we allow a Chinese-backed company to be the source of information for our youth, we have a problem. Not only that, that is algorithm driven. So that means that if myself, as a veteran conservative, actually, I just experienced it recently. I'll post the screenshot from my TikTok where I try to promote this very episode and it got banned and I did not win my appeal. There is such a thing as shadow banning so that you keep people dumb and ensure that these false narratives and anti-Semitic, anti-American things are spread like wildfire. When you have a media that's taking numbers from Hamas, from their casualties that are clearly inflated, and reporting them as if they are fact, we have a problem. When we have young Gen Z TikTokers agreeing with Bin Laden, whom one said in an interview that was published in the Esquire in 1999, and I quote, "We are sure of our victory against the Americans and the Jews, as promised by the prophet. Judgment day shall not come until the Muslim fights the Jew, where the Jew will hide behind trees and stones, and the tree and the stone will speak and say, 'Muslim, behind me is a Jew. Come and kill him.'" End quote. We have a problem. So if we want our country to survive, if you want your country to survive, this country being the United States of America, if you want to keep existing, we as Americans need to do better. We need to demand that our educational institutions stop being radicalized and stop baiting these liberal agendas that are clearly anti-American. We need to stop that. We need to demand that our news media report actual information and not try to keep, again, catering to a liberal agenda to try to destabilize our nation. We as parents need to be more involved with what we watch or let our kids watch on social media, with what they see on TikTok. Because we're going to have a bunch of radicalized kids that don't know left from right, and this country is going to cease to exist. If we want to continue having this American dream and this melting pot of different nations that come here to find a better way of life, to adopt American ideologies for the pursuit of happiness and pursuit of that American dream, we need to do better. We need to not become part of the problem in spreading this dangerous rhetoric of where being American is a bad thing, where being pro-Jew or pro-Israeli is a bad thing, where we believe in freedom and security. We need to do better. Again, I appreciate you guys listening to my podcast, Lead and Bacon Podcast. If you haven't subscribed, if you haven't followed me, do so. You can find me on YouTube, Lead and Bacon Podcast. If you're seeing this episode, I appreciate it. I ask that you subscribe. It would do me a big help. You could also follow me on Instagram. Same thing, Lead and Bacon Podcast. And funny enough, follow me on TikTok. Just Lead and Bacon. And I'll put it right here. I appreciate it. Let's do better. God bless America. This is Lead and Bacon Podcast. Take care.